Vice Chancellor Professor Nanda Badr Singh पनि आइसक्नु भएको छ र साथै कार्यक्रममा रहनुभएका नेशनल कलेजको प्रतिनिधिको रूपमा आउनुहुँदैछ उज्जवल उपाध्याय, उहाँ पनि आइसक्नु भएको छ र अनि र्यापोर्टर अर्को मेन्टर दयाराज सुवेदी सर पनि आइसक्नु भएको छ। म चाहिँ कार्यक्रमको मोडरेटर भएँ, म चाहिँ आइपुगिसकेको छु। अब हामी 2-4 मिनेटमै सुरु गर्छौँ। 2 मिनेट जति पर्खौँ भनेर म अनुमति लिइरहेको छु भाइस चान्सलर नन्द सिंहज्यू र अनि दीपक ग्यावाली सरकोबाट। Scholastic talks series on the topic in the post-pandemic scenario, in the topic of priorities in development and international cooperation. What prospect do we see as new opportunities? And then we have the inaugural speaker today, academician Deepak Gawali. And then this program is going to be opened by the Vice Chancellor of Midwest University, Professor Nanda Badr Singh. As we are all aware that this COVID-19, the coronavirus is still persisting. And just I checked the world meter. It is said that the new cases is over 3.5 million on 20th of January. That was just the other day. 35 lakh पुगेको रहेछ नयाँ केसहरू. So it is the record actually. And in Nepal's case, the new cases is nearly 10,000. And the total case in Nepal is about 900,000. While the world's total confirmed cases are 337 million. 33 crore 70 lakh पुगेको रहेछ. Unfortunately, some 5.6 million people have already lost their life because of this deadly virus, which is 1.7% of the total confirmed cases. But if you compare with Spanish flu, this 1.7% of death is actually a very good progress made by science and technology, as we have the vaccines. As per the WHO, 9.6 billion vaccine doses have been administered already. Though there are some disparities, that's a different thing. So if we compare the Spanish flu, the COVID-19, we are progressing thanks to science and technology actually, because in the Spanish flu, some 1/3 of the world population became infected, and out of which 10% infected died. That was 100 million that time. So this is all because of the scientific awareness, the vaccine development and everything. And what could be the role of the academia in such scene, in such a pandemic? I think we think there are 3 major roles that all academia should play. Number 1 is, of course, public awareness building. Secondly, research. And third, the continued education. So keeping these in view, the Midwest University formed the COVID-19 expert panel involving international experts as well. And under the same umbrella, MICD conducted a series of webinars last year on scholastic endeavor amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And this year, we are much encouraged and motivated that National College and Thames International College have also joined. So with this brief background, I would like to enter into our main agenda today, that is the talk by academician Deepak Gawali. So before I request him, let me give a brief introduction of him. Well, before I invite academician Deepak Gawali, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Nanda Badr Singh to give an opening remarks of this very important scholastic talk series. Professor Nanda Badr Singh, I request you. Panchadev sir, sir पाल्नु भएको हो?
भर्खरै मैले भिसर उहाँको पर्सनल सेक्रेटरीसँग कुरा भएको थियो सर।
हजुर।
दिल्ली उहाँ पनि यसमा जोइन हुनुहुन्छ, म अलि बाहिर छु। उहाँले भिसर जोइन गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ भन्ने कुरा खबर पाएको थिएँ सर मैले। जोइन गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ होला।
हस्। इन द मेन टाइम देन म यो समयलाई सदुपयोग गर्दै म दीपक गेवाली सरको परिचय राख्न चाहन्छु by utilizing the time. So Deepak Gawali, personally I know him for many years actually. And for me personally, he is always very inspiring figure and very motivating scholar. And I'm a lucky guy that I had a few opportunities to work with him sometimes. Actually, Deepak Gawali does not need an introduction. He is a hydroelectric power engineer. Interestingly, during the time of Cold War, he had his academic degree from Moscow Energy Institute of USSR, and then a political, and then his master's degree in economics from University of California, Berkeley. So he brings, the knowledge or the experience from two completely different poles, which was separated by Cold War till 1990s. And he also served as the Nepal's Minister for Water Resources back in 2002. And he is a very well-known academician who is the academician at Nepal Academy of Science and Technology. And he himself terms as interdisciplinary professional researcher. And he had been with the advisory board of various universities, international organizations. And thanks to COVID, that we find him in Nepal these days. Otherwise, all the time I find him going here and there, giving visiting professorship and giving lectures. And he's also a voracious reader and a very regular contributor to Nepali media on various issues. And he has edited and authored a lot of books, articles. It's countless, I would say. And his latest book is The Water Energy Food Nexus, which is published by Ropeways. And recently he has published another book, Aid Technology Development, The Lessons from Nepal. It's also published by Ropeways. And before that, his famous books are like Water Nepal, Water Technology and Society, Learning the Lessons of River Management in Nepal, Ropeways in Nepal, Context, Constraint, and Co-Evolution. So with this very brief introduction, now we have our respected Vice Chancellor of Midwest University. I request him to give an opening remarks to this scholarly talks initiated by the three institutions, Midwest University, National College, and Thames International College. I request you, I invite Professor Singh.
Thank you, Professor Buizu. And I think we're all gathered here from across the world. So let me greet you from Surkhet, Nepal, starting from good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, if it is not mistaken, and namaskar at the time of having COVID infection globally. We feel namaskar is much better. It is a way of protecting ourselves from contamination. And thank you for invitation and organizing this scholastic talk series once again. Last time we concluded like this, another talk series, and they published its outcome. Last year, they organized 11 such scholastic out of this talk series in 11 chapters and 148 pages. And personally, I got an opportunity last time, around 2 weeks ago, I think, 2.5 weeks ago. We made it public. For this one, and today again, we started this one. So therefore, I would like to welcome all of you from across the world, and especially from our minister, Deepak Gavali. Even though I haven't met him personally, I have already gone through each books and each so many hectic interviews relating to Nepal's national policy and the water resource utilization for the prosperity of the Nepal, of our country, Nepal. And all other organizers, including National College and International Thames International College. I would like to thank you, and you are part of Midwestern University. I am happy for that. And as you know, the COVID has shifted the paradigms from our traditional or conventional way of thinking, or I should say it's a modus operandi. What human being was doing, it completely changed these days. We were thinking in a traditional way. Forcefully, COVID-19 has taught us how to change in accordance with the hard time and difficult situations. In this sense, we should thank COVID-19 because COVID-19 is very, very wide and intellectual for all of us, because we have to also be wise and intellectual to fight with COVID-19 as well. So the question is whether we are capable of fighting with this virus with our capacity or not. Within the last 2 years, our experience has said that we can. A lot of innovations are there. And scientists have started working day and night, came out with the vaccines, and today world's almost half of the population is vaccinated. And if we look into the data, just 1 hour before, out of 343,332,219, in another way, 34 crore 33 lakhs 32,219 COVID cases. It is 100% if you take it. 1.62% is the death. 1.62% is the death rate. 80.52% is recovery rate, and 17.86% is active cases. Still, we have around 18% active cases all over the world, which is about 61,302,252 cases. In this situation, we are not completely shifting into the post-pandemic era, but we are trying to push ourselves into that situation. Even though 18% of the population is still in active cases. That's why now the whole humanity and our brain in the world has to think in 2 ways. One is we have to redesign the holistic picture of the state in order to deal with the post-pandemic priorities relating to the topics, that is the international development and international cooperations. These 2 things are very important for today's talks. Therefore, what we have to think is what our government globally started thinking individually. Now they have to come together collectively and think that their resources should be redesigned, reallocated in order to address this pandemic issue of COVID-19 at the same time trying to fulfill their national development goals as well, which is related to achieving the basic, this standard related to the SDG goals of 17, this partnerships, these goals. Out of the 17 one, as you know, many are related to socio-economic and environmental cases, but they are ultimately related to the post or the pre or middle, whatever you say, it's a continuous infrastructure development and other development strategies. For that, the Institute of Midway University, we call it the MICT, Masters in International Cooperation Development, has timely decided to talk about this issue in collaboration with our international partners from Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So I would like to thank you for timely demanded and timely needed subject to fixed and talk about it. And me, as the Vice Chancellor of Midwestern University, is always to inspire the young generations and MICT team along with the international community to actively work and try to come up with some academic outcomes so that the world can understand that universities are really trying their best to deal with this kind of issues in the world. Doctors are working for their medical capacity, and engineers are working for the constructions, and other academics are working for that one. So we today who are gathered here from the university premises, academic communities, and social and political movement, we have started thinking together to deal with these issues with one voice. So, and very frankly talking, if we do not take it otherwise, because I'm alone in the room. Just yesterday, I was positive, tested positive, COVID-19 positive patient now I am, but I've been working day and night for the last 1.5 weeks, but I was not feeling good, but I went for the checkup. Then when I came home from the office to study, I was sent information that I was positive tested. That's fine, no problem. We have to develop high morale and then inspire our population that Omicron variant is not a panic, is neither is a any terror. We have to try to find out our own way to live together with the virus in the days to come, in the years to come. So we have to be very much careful, but we have to be ready to compromise with the virus to live together. We call it the coexistence with the virus along with the nature. So for this kind of things, at last but not the least, what I would like to say is that this kind of scholastic stage will come up with new outcomes for the next 1 year. And again, we'll give another message across the world with our common cooperation together. And then at last, what I say, only one, I don't like to talk more. Now our resources and policies should be redesigned in order to address the problems of humanity after COVID-19 calamity, especially in the field of developing the capacity of medical sciences and innovating the new vaccines and deploying it to the grassroots level so that poor people will be protected. And then we have to also increase our investment. In developed country, people say there should be the employment guarantee for the urban areas. I should reverse. In Nepal, many of people are going back to villages. So we have to reverse our resources and send it back to the society, to the villages, so that we have to create the job in the villages. Many people from all the world, when they return backward to the villages. Therefore, now we need to create the jobs in the villages, not in the urban areas. Even the urban areas are, heavily migrated one throughout the world. And the important thing is the government has to think with the, this financial stimulus packages they should come so that our international cooperation and the development will be easily enhanced. And our universities, our government should allocate R&D so that this R&D research and development budget allocated by the government will help us, our teams and our professors to get engaged in innovations and research. That will help how to deal with the, these kind of things. That will help us to make a stronger bond of international cooperation and development. I think this is timely, this fixed our needed topic you chose. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Dinesh Vuchu, by inviting a beautiful people like Deepak Gavali and other two people for their, this participation, and all the participants, dignified participant from Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Thank you so much once again. Be strong and come up with the new vigor to overcome this issue. Thank you so much, and bye-bye and namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chancellor, Professor Singh. It is bad that you have been tested positive to COVID-19, but we are much more encouraged, inspired by your presence today here, despite your health illness. Thank you so much. So this can be yet another message to the academia that how the Midwestern University and other institutions are working towards it. So with this opening remarks from the Vice Chancellor, I would like to now invite Deepak Gawali, sir. And for your kind information, we have the rapporteurs, Diksha Misra, Pratishtha Shakya, and Medisa Kafle. And I apologize that I just jumped to this introduction. So before I again apologizing, before inviting Deepak Gawali, sir, I would like to welcome. I would like to invite Ujjwal Upadhyaya, who is representing National College and who is giving a welcome note here. In the program, for your kind information, you must have seen the welcome was to be by Madhav Prasad Neupane, who is the principal of National College. But very unfortunately, his family got infected and tested positive, so he's in a little bit stressful time. So instead of him, Ujjwal Upadhyaya, a senior faculty at National College, is giving a welcome note on behalf of National College. Ujjwal, sir, over to you. And then we will invite Deepak Gawali, sir.
Thank you, Dinesh sir, for your. Thank you. Can you hear me? I think so. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dinesh sir, for your. Thank you for inviting me here. And it's me, Ujjwal Upadhyaya, just Dinesh sir mentioned. So this has been a fantastic collaboration between MICD and Midwestern University, Thames International College and National College, and two other institutions. So what a great talk program we are going to have today, because we don't need any kind of introduction, particularly from Dr. Deepak Gawali. I'm a big fan of him. And this is the kind of initiatives that was badly needed between the institutions that are inside Nepal, because the topic itself suggests that what kind of development policies and what kind of initiative that should we look forward, particularly in the wake of pandemic. So what we need most is collaboration, because we are not the kind of institution who will do the research, genetic research, and develop various kind of vaccines in order to overcome this kind of disease. So what we can do is how to make scenario, how to make things normal despite pandemic. So the institution like Thames International College, MICD, and National College, because National College has been running 3 academic programs for past several years, and development studies, as Dr. Bhuju mentioned, that National College has been pioneer in terms of starting this development studies program since 1999. And our 21st batch got graduated just a year before in 2021. And National College has been doing a lot, particularly in terms of collaborating with various institutions for the public benefits. So the institution like ours can also collaborate with each other to make people more aware in order to overcome the pandemic. And we can also develop a kind of uh, collaboration in order to continue, in order to take our education get going despite pandemic. And we have been doing lots of seminars and workshop as well in terms of how to take this, how to carry this educational activities on and on despite pandemic and various other obstructions that we have been facing. So definitely today's remarks and today's insightful talk by Dr. Gawali will give us a lot of insightful ideas, and this will definitely help us to develop a kind of policy, and it will help us to move forward. And thank you so much, Deepak sir, and also thank you so much, MICT team and Midwestern University and Dr. Dinesh Bhuju in particular for initiating this program and also bringing us together in order to start such program. So on behalf of National College and entire organizing committee, I would like to welcome all the participants in this highly valuable and a vibrant talk program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ujjwal sir. So now we invite academician Deepak Gavali for his long-awaited talk. Deepak Gavali, sir, over to you.
Thank you, respected Vice Chancellor, my good friend Dinesh Bhuju, and friends. Thank you for inviting me to share some ideas. And I've got to warn the students, especially, I'm not here to give you knowledge. I'm here to confuse you. Because I believe that confusion is the first step or sign towards the opening of wisdom. It's people who are not confused and think they know everything that are a big problem in this world, okay? So the more I confuse you at the end of this, the more happy I'll be. If I confuse you totally, I'll think I've been very successful. If not, I'll consider myself a failure. So with that, let me start a screen share. I believe I can do that. Let's see. I first have to, gosh, how do I get there? Okay. Now I don't see the.
You are co-host, so you can do it.
Okay, so I can just
yes.
Share. Do you see my screen?
Yes, I saw Saraswati ji.
Oh, it's the wrong one there. Okay, let me just shift it over this side. Let me shift it over. See how I can do that. This is all. You guys have to bear with me. Okay, so this is always
no problem, sir.
If I
Till you confuse us, no problem.
No, I've got two screens. You see, so
yeah, I got it. This is.
Let me do it again. If I do a screen share and then I share my first screen. Okay, I think it's better.
Rethinking Development, is it so?
Yes, it's, and do you see the full screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. So let me begin right away. I've titled it Rethinking Development as we enter a post-pandemic world of greater uncertainties. Okay, so when we talk about development, we have seen in Nepal roughly something like 70 years, 7 decades of development, roughly as old as I am. Okay, and results are highly mixed. Okay, we have not been, with all these efforts, a developed country. There's still debate whether we are least developed or graduating to middle income development or whatever. But essentially, we feel that there is a lot left to be, developed. Okay? That's the first thing. The most important is we are right now entering in a very uncertain world, okay, where it's really incumbent on all of us, especially, the students here who are going to be into international and, national development and be studying that. You will have to do some serious thinking about what development is. Okay. And essentially that entails generating what I call, or what we cultural theorists call, and I'll get into that later, uncomfortable knowledge. It's comfortable knowledge that got us in this mess. So we have to come up with uncomfortable knowledge. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, okay? So this is where we are. Now, if you look at the screen that I have in front of you, what I'm asking is that, can we go in rethinking development from the picture you see on the left-hand side, the dozer atanka, as it's called, bulldozer terrorism, is destroying our environment. It's not just destroying the hill environment. Much of the hills find their way into the rivers. Much of that sediment ends up in the valley bottoms and the tarai, and the bed level of the rivers rise. As a result, we end up getting much, much more floods, much higher than before. Now, is that the kind of development we want? Yeah, we want, access to markets. We want, communication access, not just road. But then there are alternatives. For example, ropeways, which I will also talk about later. So we are now talking about trying to make a major shift in our thinking for a variety of reasons that I'll get into, from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. And this not just in the transport and sector, but it has to be done in just about every sector we can think of: energy, food production, water management, health, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, what are the uncertainties we are talking about? I shall talk about 4 uncertainties stepwise. Okay. First of all, we are facing massive climate uncertainties. And I'll talk a bit about that because that's extremely important. It has thrown climate change, and the uncertainties climate change has brought about, has thrown a lot of our standard ways of doing business out of the window. In my own field, water resources, for example, we design dams by taking past data, of which Nepal is very bad. We don't have much past data, but whatever we have. Okay. We take that data, we do, as you all know, as students, master students, regression analysis, and try to project into the future the probability of a once in a 500-year flood, once in a 5,000-year flood, or whatever, and design dams accordingly. Now, what climate change is telling us is the future is not going to be like the past. Now, if the future is not going to be like the past, the entire methodology of hydrotechnical construction philosophically goes out of the window. Because the future is not like the past. Your past data might still tell you something, but the idea of projecting a future based on the past is meaningless. Okay, I'm just giving you one example. Okay, I'll talk about the global finance, the uncertainties in global finance that are coming. That's going to have a huge impact, on development. The changing global order, the very global order is changing, and it's already having a massive impact on how we do development. Coupled with that, we have Nepal's transition in constant flux still, okay, which is causing all kinds of other problems, as if we didn't need that one more problem on top of everything else. Okay, so I'll begin by, let's start talking about climate change. This is something I like to show people, very much. This comes out of a book we did long ago called, Dakshin Asia Ma Pani Ko Artha Rajniti, Political Economy of Water in South Asia, published around 1997. It's in Nepali. If you take a drum, a 2-meter drum, and put it half filled with water in Scandinavia, in let's say southern Italy, and in Africa, Kenya, for example, okay, or Tanzania, what will happen is in a year's time, you can see what happens. In 2 years' time, in Scandinavia, the drum will start overflowing. This is drum left outside, In South Europe, it'll stay the same. And in East Africa, it'll have evaporated completely. Which means that, just 1,000 millimeters of rain in all 3 places, the amount of water that comes available to you, completely changes. The same amount of water is more than sufficient in Scandinavia, barely enough in Middle Europe, and absolutely insufficient in Africa. Well, the same applies to us here also. The same amount of water in the hot Tarai versus high Himal versus mid hills is also very different. Now, why do I say that? Because this is where climate change impact is going to have a problem. We are too used to thinking of water in terms of dams, Kosi, Karnali Dam, Budi Gandaki, all this sort of thing, because that's what the normal discourse is. But there are essentially 6 types of water. And we have really not paid attention to the most important of them, the 2 most important, which is white water. It's the water in clouds, atmospheric moisture. They're also now called sky rivers. Okay, they are the ultimate source of our water, and we know so little about it. Why does the precipitation occur, when does it not occur? Let me add here, why this is important is because climate change, one thing with all the climate change models is that is certain, is that temperatures are rising. There's no doubt about it. Climate change is happening. Temperatures are rising all over the world, faster in the high mountains than in the low plains, and so on. However, when it comes to precipitation, there is absolute uncertainty. 2009, we did some modeling exercise we are with King's College London and others. And this was before the Copenhagen Climate Conference. And what the 6 global circulation models showed for Nepal was that, yes, temperatures it predicts quite well. Forecasting, backcasting, it does well. When it comes to precipitation, the models predicted that in Nepal with climate change, the precipitation could increase by 135% or decrease by minus 53%. Now that is a huge uncertainty, from drought to floods. So what are we going to have with climate change? I don't know anything. So this is where white water is so important, and we have no idea. What will happen to our hydropower plants that are dependent on rainfall to produce the electricity? Go out of business? I don't know. Then much of the precipitation that falls as and remains as green water. Now, green water is the most ignored kind of water. It's the water in soil moisture. All our forests, all our grasslands, and all our rain-fed dryland agriculture is dependent on it. But we do not study green water at all. We have a hegemony of blue water. We only think of water in rivers, streams, Kosi, Gandak, Karnali, Mahakali, Pancheshwar, Ganga, Brahmaputra, all these big fights and all that, water conflicts, so on and so forth. But blue water is there, but blue water is only a part of the overall water issue. And then the most important other is brown water. Brown water is the groundwater that's responsible for irrigated agriculture, water supply for most cities now around the world, for domestic household use, etc. Is the groundwater. Okay, very little knowledge of groundwater also. In Nepal, the tragedy is highlighted by the fact that as springs are drying across the Himalaya, which I'll talk about in a second, okay, the assumption is that you just do deep boring and pump out the water. Well, if the water is not going in, if your precipitation is changing and all kinds of things are happening, if everybody is pumping out groundwater, what happens? Your wells, your pump wells will go dry, and that is happening also. Okay, so there's a total misguided policy at work here. Finally, you have gray water, which is water we use that could be slightly recycled, cleaned up, and used for other purposes, which we don't do. And of course, the black water, which is highly polluted industrial wastewater. Now, we just focus too much on blue water and don't consider the other waters, okay? Which means we are not really being very scientific about what water resource development entails. I told you springs are drying across the Himalaya. Water tower in the Himalaya, I'm sure you heard about it, and people think of water tower only with snow and glacier. It's not true. Our research has shown that every hill, Shivapuri, Fulchoki, Nagarjung, all these hills are water towers. They don't get snow very rarely. I mean, yesterday I think there's some snow in Simanjang, but that lasts about a day and melts, okay? So our mid-hill mountains do not get snow. All the water within, which supplies the spring waters, whether it is Godavari Springs, Brainilkanta Springs, the springs in Dakhinkali, which supply all our drinking water, okay? They come from the water stored in these water towers. Unfortunately, with excessive pumping, with the decline of keeping of ponds, the picture you see on the left, this is a pond we helped restore in Dapcha. Once the pond was restored, it turned out that the springs below came back to life. The springs that had disappeared, and people were thinking of migrating out of the village because there was no drinking water in the village and so on. Well, they found out that they could keep buffaloes, they could keep livestock, and they themselves could live there. So this is another aspect of this brown water, green water, white water linkage. Okay. Another important part here that we have to consider is that how do we use water? For drinking and biological survival, about 3 liters a day is enough. But then, for bathing, washing, your utility use, about 40 liters is required. To produce 1 kilo of rice, you need at least 3,000 liters of water. You drink a cup of coffee. In that cup of coffee, there is 140 liters of water embedded from the production process downwards. Okay. So chicken, 4,000 liters of water required to produce a kilogram of chicken. Paper, steel, you can see these numbers. What this means is, as Malin Falkenmark, the Swedish water guru, what she says is no country can industrialize if it doesn't have adequate water. Now, we are talking of industrializing Nepal so that our youth don't have to find jobs in the Gulf or Malaysia. Okay. Well, for that, we need water. What kind of water? Well, we start thinking about it. What produces what? Now, this leads me to this argument that the next major battle in the years ahead in the field of environment is going to be on what we call water and energy footprints. Just as 140 liters of water is embedded in a cup of coffee, in a shirt you wear, in everything you produce, there is water and energy embedded, which is called the footprint. Okay. Now, the environmental fight will have to be about reducing that footprint. Can we do more, produce more with less water, less energy, more efficiently? Okay. And so that, our carbon emission, et cetera, are all low. You see, beef is one of the worst, as you can see, poultry, rice, maize, bananas, potatoes. As you go down, you see that they have less and less embedded water in them. Now, the problem is, are you going to have these things produced more with green water, blue water, or gray water? Blue water is water that comes from building a dam, pumping from groundwater, and so on and so forth. Okay. Whereas green water is the one that nature provides. So if your chicken is raised industrially, you're probably using mostly blue water. If your chicken is just free ranging in a village and all that, it's mostly green water that your chicken comes from. Okay. So this is one footprint aspect. Energy, similarly, each one of all our food products have energy in them, and the waste of food is so high globally, very high at the domestic level in the industrialized country, very high at the production level in third world countries like Nepal. 50% of the agriculture produce is lost between the field harvesting to storage before it even gets to the market for us. Now, loss of food like that means our carbon emission goes very high. And FAO has calculated that if all the food waste in the world were one country, it would be the third highest emitter of global greenhouse gases, not just CO2, but methane and hydrogen sulfide, God knows, all these nasty things that come when food rots. Okay. So which leads us in development thinking to this idea that is development being able to eat more meat, or is it about getting most of our protein from vegetable products? I'm not saying give up meat altogether, but what I'm saying is, should development go for increasing meat consumption, or should it go for people getting more of their healthy protein from less water and energy embedded sources? This becomes an extremely important point. Now, rethinking development, and especially rethinking water development, requires many things. Okay, I'll tell you one thing. We talk about developing dams in Nepal so that, we export electricity to India and make money. Unfortunately, there's a great USAID study of 2002 which has done this exercise, which shows that if you exported electricity to India, you'd get 3 cents. The report says 6 cents, but actually the price we get from India is about 3 cents. Okay. If you use that electricity within Nepal, the value added that comes from your industry, your photocopy shops using it, your tourism being able to, tourist promoters being able to use the internet and all more reliably to get more people in, to have industries use cheap and reliable electricity to produce better and so on. If you do that, the value added, to our economy is 86 cents. So should we have a hydro development policy in Nepal that aims to export electricity to India or Bangladesh and earn 3 cents? Or should we have a policy that aims to use it within Nepal to generate 86 cents in the national economy? Now, this becomes a very, very serious development problem. And this is what I mean by rethinking development. Okay. Take another example. India has now, since 2015, declared 111 waterways in India, including Ganga, Brahmaputra, number 1 and number 2, as well as the southern peninsular rivers, as going to be developed for navigation. Okay, here's the picture of the Ganga as navigation, and there's a big proposal to connect the Gandak with this navigation and Kosi with this navigation, and that would allow us access to the sea. Containers could come all the way from Japan or Shanghai or wherever, up the Ganga and right up to Nepal border, or maybe even up to, God knows, Narayan Ghat and up to Itari. Why this is important is because there's amazing numbers behind the physics of transport. 1 horsepower engine can move 50 kilograms for a truck on the road, 500 kilograms for railway, and 4,000 kilograms for inland water transport. Water transport is the cheapest form of transport for mass heavy goods, cement, construction material, grain, fuel, petroleum products, and so on. In terms of energy, to transport 1,000 ton per kilometer, truck consumes 920, rail transport consumes 430, you can see, and inland shipping consumes 230 megajoules. So in terms of energy, carbon emission, in terms of energy efficiency and all, there is no substitute to developing water transport. No region of the world has developed without developing water transport. America, Mississippi is navigable from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada border. Europe, the Rhine is navigable all the way from Switzerland, a landlocked country, all the way to the North Sea and Netherlands. Russia, the Volga and the Danube are navigable from the Black Sea all the way to St. Petersburg in the Finnish Gulf. Okay, and China, which had very little inland navigation in 1986, now has overtaken the United States in terms of navigable transport. Why? Because it is much cheaper. So, but South Asia has not done it. And why I'm raising this is, as we rethink development, are we going to develop hydropower or storage dams in Nepal, drowning Nepali villages, to get 3 cents instead of getting 86 cents for using electricity? Or are we also going to develop it so that tomorrow we get cheap transport and we can bargain with India saying, okay, we will build a high dam in Nepal to store the water, but you cannot have transport on the Ganga and the Brahmaputra in the dry season because there is no water. It needs water from storage dams in the Himalaya in Nepal. Now, those factors have to come into your calculation of development thinking. This is extremely, this is what I mean by rethinking development. These are the figures for, you can look at Singapore, China, how much container traffic really moves by water. And you find out that India is nowhere, compared to China, 33%, India is just 1%, okay? Now, this is where I also mean, I showed you that picture in the beginning. Do we go for dozer atanka kind of transport, or do we go for cheaper alternatives? You see, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, 2 years' time, 2024, we will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of ropeways in Nepal. In 1924, Chandra Samser introduced the first ropeway. 1964, the USAID upgraded that, Hetauda Kathmandu ropeway. And right now, ropeway has languished because we have gone for diesel spewing trucks as the main means of transport. But if you look at this, and it comes from our book, Water in Ropeways in Nepal, if you can download it from the website of Nepal Water Conservation Foundation, you see that ropeways are 3 times cheaper to build than an equivalent green road, gravel green road. I'm not talking about big, expensive highways. 8 times quicker to install. It can be installed in 1 season, whereas a road takes years and years to build, okay? And in terms of energy, and this is the calculation for Bhattenada, it shows that, it uses half the energy that a truck uses to transport similar amount of goods, okay? And, with this, why is it that somebody talked about policy, okay? Why is it that Nepal government transport policy still fails with all these basic physics and economics staring you in the face, refuses to go in that direction? It's because of what we call technological lockedness. Okay. Now, what I'm going to argue here, and as I shift now to this whole issue of rethinking technology, I'm arguing that in rethinking development, we have to go for rethinking technology also. Some technologies are liberating, others are constricting. Okay. Some technologies lock you into an unsustainable path of development, whereas other technologies are flexible and allow you better ability to shift in terms of the uncertainties of climate and every other thing we're talking about. Okay. Brian Arthur, the philosopher of technology, has argued that every country should be assessed in terms of the depth of its technology. You may have a laptop, but your laptop requires power system, your laptop requires software, your laptop requires certain chemical industries also, and mechanical industries and electrical industries to be in place if it goes wrong. Okay. Otherwise, you just have to junk your laptop completely. Okay. An aircraft, a truck, and so on and so forth. Each one of them has to have depth in technology, and it also has to have domain diversity from different sectors that can feed in, because the technology is a complex thing of many domains and subdomains. Okay. Now, in development, what we have done is we have taken an approach of black box technology. We just import a technology from outside, put it in there. Well, it runs as long as it runs, and then it becomes what I have called development tombs, bikasetsihan. Okay. They cannot be repaired because nobody knows how to repair, or you don't have the technological capacity to repair them. As we can see here in this picture, our traditional technology was brushwood dams. This is on the Tinau in Palpa. What we did was replaced that kind of technology, saying we need modern technology, with a cement dam, the Hatisune Barrage in Butwal on the Tinau, which got washed away the year after it was built because the river moved away in a flood and the whole dam was just standing high and dry there. Okay. Now, that area, Morchuar, for instance, which was supposed to have been served by that failed dam, now has pumps because that area has lots of groundwater. So you see three types of technology. The first technology, brushwood dam, is a disposable dam technology. It gets disposed every, monsoon. Nobody needs water in the monsoon, okay? But it requires very high community input. All the community has to get together and do it. Something like 80% of hill irrigation in Nepal still functions with that technology. The other technology is agency-led technology, big, irrigation department, so on and so forth, okay? The third one is a market-led technology. You have the money, you put in a boring and buy a pump and pump away, okay? So you see that technologies are not simple just like that. They come with certain social embeddedness or requirement of social embeddedness in them, okay? Now, what has happened in Nepal recently with this climate change, and my climate change part ends here, is go through this report. You can download it. It's a citizens' assessment of climate action in Nepal that we did some time back for 2018, which shows that Nepal's climate policies are so good, we should be given a Nobel Prize, okay? But then our climate action is so abysmal that we deserve to be locked in a dungeon and whipped, because our fossil fuel addiction is increasing dramatically. Just in the 1 year, 2008-2009, our fossil fuel diesel import increased from 3 lakh kiloliters to 6 lakh kiloliters. Not because we had massive development, it's just because the license was opened for all kinds of Pajeros and luxury vehicles coming in, okay? Which means we have become more and more fossil fuel addicted, even as our hydro development, developed hydro, is wasting energy because there is no connection. There is no grid connection, okay? Now, when we talk of global finance, this is one thing I like to use. This is a book we brought out in 2004, Aid Under Stress, okay? And what this shows is that foreign aid is really no help in this matter, in the uncertainty that we are facing, okay? And I'll talk about it in a second. First of all, we showed that we did the research for water supply, and we found out that by household projects done by local communities are 3 times cheaper than done by foreign aid donors, okay? Interestingly, even though they are 3 times cheaper, 66% of the cost is on hardware and 33% is on software. Whereas by foreign aid donors, they're 3 times more expensive, but then only 33% of the cost is on hardware. Most of it is on expensive consultants and others from abroad. Okay. The same in rural electrification. Community electricity has found out that when they do rural electrification, it is $99 per household. Whereas by foreign aid donors, ADB or World Bank or whatever, is $300 per household, 3 times more. Today's MCC debate has the same story. Nepal Electricity Authority is the only one which has built 400 kV transmission line, and Dalkebar Muzaffarpur one, and it did it at 50 million rupees per kilometer. Okay, and even that I consider too high. Okay, whereas MCC is proposing to do 400 kilovolt transmission line at 160 million per kilometer. So you see that foreign aid has its own kind of problems. Now, main problem with global finance and COVID lesson is that COVID has shown that there is limits to globalization. Since the 1950s, we've been going for globalization, global everything, which is all very nice, okay? But then with globalization comes the bad part of globalization, which means diseases move so freely across boundaries, there's really no way of stopping it, okay? Unless you have extremely autocratic regimes, there's no way of stopping it, okay? Now, the conclusion that comes from this, and this is my conclusion that I'm putting in front of you, is that the value of local production becomes now very important. Okay? We talked about footprint. When potatoes grown in Gorkha cannot sell in Gorkha Bazaar because potatoes imported from Punjab, they cannot compete with, okay, then there's something seriously wrong with the development philosophy in Nepal. Because the potatoes coming from Punjab have burnt 2,000 kilometers of fossil fuel, coming 2,000 kilometers away. Whereas the one carried by the villager that he grew in Gorkha to the bazaar, has a very low footprint of energy. So something is very perverse as Nepal starts importing vegetables and does not grow them, because most of our vegetable growers are herding camels in Saudi Arabia right now. Okay, so there is something very significantly wrong in the way we are looking at our economy of productions. Okay, we also argue in this book, Aid Under Stress, that we have come to the end of the age of aid. The age of aid, people ask me this question and say, oh, Farping was built by what, British aid? No, it was Chandra Samshay's money. Don't forget Nepali money. There was no foreign aid in those days. Foreign aid was born as an institution after the Second World War only, okay? And it was designed so that the third world countries would not be part of the second world. Second world means communist countries like Russia, China, and all that, okay? But with the collapse of the Berlin Wall, what happened was there was no need to have foreign aid. So in a sense, the age of aid really ended with the collapse of the Berlin Wall. There is momentum going on. There are, pensions to be paid in the World Bank and all that. So I think they'll continue for a while. But the real essence of foreign aid is gone. So to rely and to think that Nepal's development will occur with foreign aid is the first thing we got to get out of our heads now. There is no foreign aid coming. Why do I argue with that? Let me go for the global order as well. The Washington Consensus of the 1990s, after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, what it led is to aid being more nakedly an instrument of foreign policy. DFID is now closed, the British Foreign Aid Agency. It's now part of the British Foreign Office. USAID Rabi Bhavan is closed, and that office has shifted to the US Embassy. So while in the 50s and 60s, foreign aid was more professional about development, now it is more political and strategic to further the interests of the aid-giving country, and as the debate on MCC right now currently shows. Okay, another factor you have to take into account is in the 1960s, when foreign aid was rising like crazy as an institution also, US accounted for 60% of the world's GDP. Today, US accounts for, depends on how you calculate the GDP. If you get out the financial shenanigan part, US's contribution of GDP is about at par with China. With China, if you weight the manufacturing higher, you find China is even higher. If you weigh financial, US comes higher, but it's around 15 to 18% now. So your capacity to give aid also declines by the same amount, okay? So this is what we have to really understand. Moreover, one factor that students of international development and aid must realize, Larry Summers, who was US, I think, finance secretary or something, finance minister, he became the president of Harvard. We had a big debate. I was on that debate in Vienna against him when he argued that third world countries are under polluted and that polluting industries from Europe and America should be shifted to third world countries. I mean, it was a big racket, big this thing, ruckus, and we all took part in that debate. But what the fallout of that was, the West basically thought that controlling finance is enough, that you can shift manufacturing to China and East Asia, and still live very well. Well, it turns out you can't, because manufacturing has now shifted that side. Americans don't manufacture anything, okay, practically. You can't buy any made in America stuff in American stores, okay. And what has happened is that now US has the highest global debt of $30 trillion. Nobody knows how that can be solved. So if the crunch came like 1921, the collapse of the global collapse of the financial system, which 2008 we nearly headed to, you will find out that there are certain strains going on in Western countries, which is US NATO maintains 700 military bases in about 80 plus countries. Now, with 30 trillion debt, how long can you handle? Now, that problem seems to have come in Afghanistan as the US had to withdraw. Now you're seeing that problem being played out in the Ukraine right now, and so on, and Taiwan, and so on. Okay. Now, David Malpass, the president of the World Bank, just recently in December, really chided Microsoft for spending something like, I think they spent $69 billion to buy out a gaming company. When he said 48 countries had pledged in December to give 24 billion only, much less than the 69-70 billion to buy gaming company, 24 billion to fight poverty. And that money has not come about. Now, you have a global financial order that is really lopsided. And Oxfam, I suggest all the students read this Oxfam report that has just come out, sorry, which shows that 10 of the richest people on earth, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and all, their wealth doubled in this pandemic, from 700 billion to 1.5 trillion just in this one pandemic alone, when most of the people went down in poverty during the pandemic period. Today, that report calculates that there's a new billionaire every 26 hours being created, which is increasing inequality in the world. And there's one death every 4 seconds because of inequality and poverty. So you have one billionaire being born every 26 hours and one death every 4 seconds by poverty, not by other means, not by old age and all that. Okay? So what we are talking here really is about the changing global order that can no longer sustain development as we know it. And there's a need to rethink our own development very carefully. And in this, the transition in Nepal is showing that we are on extremely shaky grounds. Okay, I'm coming to a close. I'll just talk a little bit about the social science that might help you. I'll close with that. But the transition in Nepal shows that there's a serious problem. Our constitution says we are socialism oriented, which means we are society oriented. I define socialism very differently. Okay, but then the problem is that we are finding out the public goods are being squandered. Public goods, whether they are 2.5 lakh, booster doses that went missing or was sold in the black market, as we understand, for illegal second booster shots, or to have public property siphoned off, cafeterias in national assets like the Royal Palace and so on and so forth, or and so on, means that Nepal currently is in the same kind of private mafia rule as Yeltsin's Russia in the 1990s. That had to be restored by or gotten rid of by Putin to make Russia again strong, which the West doesn't like. That's a different story. But we seem to be in the same kind of a situation. So I will quickly go to this the kind of social sciences that you might help you understand development much better than the standard, this GDP and all these numbers that mean nothing. It depends on how you calculate. Now, one of the problem with technology, as we said, is that you have to go for flexible technologies. Now, if you go in for inflexible technologies, technical inflexibility and organizational inflexibility, both. Technical long lead time, like a big major dam, large scale, capital intensive, these fast track roads that never get built in, major infrastructure required early on and so on. those technologies are very inflexible. Organizational means they are single mission outfits, they're closer to criticism, hype, and hubris. These 4 indicators, this is in a chapter by Michael Thompson in Water in Nepal, a journal we brought out. You can download that also from the web. Now you see that what this does is that the social response to different technologies is very different. As you see in this picture, this is from the study we did in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu and Nalparasi on groundwater overdraft. You can see that if you treat groundwater as a private good, and a farmer, who's rich can buy a pump and, do deep boring, he pumps out water, but everybody's well goes dry, okay? As a result, the village patwari type says we should have more rules and regulations, okay? The angry young activist, thinks that the government is stupid, the market is greedy and all that, so he's starting a campaign against, this kind of misuse of water. Whereas he deals with what's called common pool goods, the government deals with public goods, market deals with private goods, and the poor voter and consumer deals with club goods. They have no access. What do? They out-migrate from their villages and go to the Gulf or Malaysia to survive. Okay, so this is where you have to see the social sciences. It's called cultural theory. I won't go into detail because that requires a completely separate lecture. But it's 4 different styles of organizing. Bureaucratic hierarchism of the state on the upper right here. On the diagonally and the opposite as market individualism, and much of social science was just between state and market. Cultural theory is arguing, and cultural theory is a new social science. It's called neo-Durkheimian theory of plural rationalities. It's a long story. But activists, they have a very different attitude towards risk, towards the kind of strategy, to the attitude towards nature, and so on. And of course, you have fatalists. So you find out that social science wise, people talk about policy. Well, governments have policy, yeah, all right, but so do markets have policy, very powerful. Coca-Cola has very powerful policies, don't worry, and so does Microsoft. And activists, Greenpeace has policies, okay? So you have to talk of policy in plural terms. It's not just government policy that makes sense. It's market policy and activist policies that also need to be brought in. And as you can see, when you do this kind of pluralization of the social policy terrain into individualism, hierarchism, egalitarianism, and fatalism, you find out that there is a very different attitude towards everything from risk to nature, to human nature, to technology, to governance, to foreign aid, to poor, and so on and so forth. Okay, and this you can get from our book, Aid, Technology and Development. And here, what I would like to argue is that this policy stool, that the diagram you see before, you leave out the fatalist for a while, but these 3 active solidarities, bureaucratic hierarchism, market individualism, and activist egalitarianism, they have very different power and very different policies, and they have to all be brought on the table. Ignoring the activists, ignoring the market will not bring you development. Development is not just a government policy, government thing. Governments can help and they need to help. Which leads us to the distortion of development in Nepal. And this is from our book, Aid, Technology and Development. I believe this is almost my last slide. Yes. Now, what we are seeing in Nepal is that the different state, market, and civic movements are not fulfilling their dharma of development. Governments should be trustees, there. But unfortunately, we have seen governments becoming businesses of license raj, giving license to their cronies and all that. And there's a lot of rent seeking. You see business people not being real markets, competitive market, but they're becoming crony capitalism with club goods disguised as private goods. And then you are finding out that civil society too is not really civil society. We have traditional civil society like Gutis, which are real civil societies, traditional ones, but they're nowhere in the picture except when they had to protest the Guti Bidek. But then the NGOs really are a distortion. NGOs are not NGOs, they are bongos, dongos, gongos, and pongos, as I call them. Business organized NGOs, donor organized NGOs, government organized NGOs, and worst of all, political party organized NGOs. And they lead to a massive distortion of development. So unless this dharma triangle gets shifted back, the distortion removed from this dharma triangle, our development is going to be in a mess. And this comes from the kind of social sciences we do, where it's not just economics, it's not just anthropology, it's not just law, but a mixture of all these 3 types of disciplines that you have to bring together to be able to get a proper perspective on development development that needs to be done by the state, development that needs to be done by the market, and development that needs to be done by voluntary civic movements. So this is the main lesson. I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepak sir.
I can stop slide sharing, I guess, right?
Yes, please. Thank you, Deepak sir. It was a great talk, but as you said, it was not easy to follow you because you really made us confusing. It really made us confusing. And I have noted, however, I tried my best. Firstly, you started with the, some, Deepak sir, your screen is still.
I'm trying to find out. I somehow don't seem to be able to get to the larger, bigger, whatever.
No problem, sir. You take your time.
Can somebody just?
I can.
Yeah, if you can get rid of it, get rid of it. I don't seem to be able to do it.
I can continue.
Yeah, you just remove that
Yeah, I can.
slide share. I don't see the slide share icon at all.
There must be one at the bottom of your desktop.
Yeah, I don't. It's not coming. It's become into a small this thing, so I just cannot find.
Nirajan, maybe you can help us.
Can you remove it? I can't get this thing to be big at all for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I can see that now.
Yeah, because I stopped. I
Okay,
stopped
great.
from my side. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir.
Now
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Deepak sir, I will put you mute now so that, okay. Thank you, Deepak sir. As you mentioned in the very beginning, you were sharing knowledge, but to confuse us, and you really were successful to do so. Having said so, I have noted 6 most important points from your talk. This I'm talking because this will help the participants to raise their hand and put their question. The first topic you mentioned, you talked was on the water science. It is wonderful to know that you have categorized water into 6 different categories: white, green, blue, brown, gray, and black. Most importantly, you said not only the white Himalaya, but also all the mountains and hills. They are the Himalaji, तपाईको त्यो म्युट गर्नुस् न है. All the mountains and hills are the water towers. So this is one aspect that you made us not confusing, but this is a new dimension to think over, especially for my graduate students and my faculties. And secondly, you mentioned about the food industry, meat versus the vegetables in terms of water and energy again. Thirdly, it was about the electricity and national waterways. We have been talking about the national highways, that is roadways. But you showed how important are the waterways, especially when you talked the physics of transport. It was mesmerizing, sir. Those great figures you made us. It told us, and in the 5th, the cost of the 8 projects. Unbelievable how the foreign aids are costly. And most importantly, I have noted, you said after the collapse of Berlin Wall, there is no more aid. What we have is actually nothing. विमलाजी, तपाईले बेला बेला खोल्दै हुनुहुन्छ, नगर्नुस् न है, अरूलाई डिस्टर्ब हुन्छ. And then finally,
Dinesh, you're mute. You've been mute.
okay, thank you, sir. So finally, the Dharma triangle you mentioned. You said you wanted us to confuse, but it was a kind of eye-opening for us, especially the social science perspective, starting from fatalism to hierarchism. So with this brief points that I've made, now I would like to invite questions from the floor, because unfortunately Deepak Shake is absent today. And again, it's because of the COVID-19, and she has some, problems at home. And we wish her early recovery of whoever the family member is being infected. So I invite our faculty members and our graduate students to raise their hand and put some confusing questions to Deepak Gawali, sir. Should I take some names? I know there are, economists, there are grad students, like we have Dr. Hira Shrestha, the faculty, the professor of economics. Maybe he has some opinion from his side. Hira sir, Athava Surat Giri, come on. Hira sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, namaskar. Dear sir, Deepak sir, and all participants.
Please, यहाँले आफ्नो कुरा राख्न सक्नुहुन्छ, Deepak sir. Deepak sir. Hira sir, over to you.
Yes, sir. Deepak sir, thank you for yes, sir. Thank you for this very informative session. This was because many people, they are confused about this foreign aid, and we the government, especially the policymakers, right? We are talking about this policy and after the pandemic, but how we can go, but how can we change this, right? Because we cannot talk this all development activities are development policy without the politics, because politicians, without changing this politicians, how can we change this all, and how can we rethink about the development? Because we are thinking in that traditional way, which we are doing from the very beginning. And is there any such a other way that we can change this, rethink about the development, sir? That which we have shown this all, but this all comes and it all triggers to the politicians, right? And before changing this mind of politicians, because this all policy makers, they are appointed by politicians and they are guided by that politicians. Until the date, we are suffering from this all, and there is a Rosa Atanka, as well as there is a many this foreign aid. Without foreign aid, we cannot develop, and we always seek to other, and we never try to develop ourselves, right? And once we thought, when the first pandemic was started, right, COVID-19 was started, the people who were in the village, we went back to the village, and we thought that they will be there because government will make some policies and plan to stay back them in the village, and there will be development and they create some employment in the village, but it could not. And now also this first, second, third wave, and we are suffering from pandemic, and now we are we are on the way of economic recession, these all. And my question is, can we have some other way without talking to the politicians? Sir, please.
Thank you, Deepak sir. म एकैछिन रोकेँ हजुरलाई, किनकि एकैचोटि दुई तीनवटा लिउँ क्वेसनहरु, अनि त्यसपछि हजुरलाई सजिलो हुन्छ भनेर. Thank you, Hira sir. The next raised hand was from Sanish. Sanish, it's your turn now. Sanish Mahajan. निराजन सबैको अनम्युट गराइदिनुस् न है, अनि हामीलाई सजिलो हुन्छ होला। सायद मैले नै गर्न मिल्छ कि, एकैछिन है, म सनिसको हेरिहाल्छु।
Okay, thank you, sir. And thank you, Deepak, sir, for your wonderful and powerful information that you've just given to us. And you have definitely made me confused and think about what the pattern of the consumption that I have in the food patterns or the fossil fuels consumption or like use that I have. So I'll definitely be thinking about it and taking the next steps. So my question would be, as we can see, a lot of things are just not in order in this country. However, there are some positive things. And since, you know, donations and foreign aids are not working that well, FDI would be the best way for now. So besides for FDI, what can be the practical other ways or like other steps that will be helpful to meet these problems or like meet the gap that we have in our country in terms of what you have just said? Thank you.
Dhanyavad. Thank you, Sanish. Then I see a hand raising from Dr. Anjana Shakya. Dr. Shakya. मैले सबैलाई अनम्युट भयो. Okay, okay, madam. Dr. Shakya.
गेवाली सर, फर्स्ट अफ अल नमस्ते. हजुरलाई त मैले चिनेको धेरै भइसक्यो. सरको एउटा कन्फ्युजन क्लम्जी वर्ड भन्ने सरको चाहिँ एकदमै राम्रो वर्ड छ हरेकचोटि, र सरको त्यही वर्डले गर्दा नि म पानीमा हुँदा पनि हामीले धेरै सक्सेस पाएको यो क्लम्जी वर्डबाट नि हामीले के गर्न सक्छौँ भने. क्वेसन भनौँ सर, अब हामीले त्यतिखेर पनि ट्रेजेडी अफ कमन्स भनेर हामीले धेरै त्यसमा गरेको थियौँ र सरले पनि धेरै कुरा लेक्चर दिनुभएको थियो. एलिस्टरले एउटा डिफ्रेन्ट 8 वटा गाइडलाइन्स दिएर कसरी सल्भ गर्न सकिन्छ भनेर. त्यही कुरामा सर यो जुन अब हाम्रो टपिक चाहिँ म कन्फ्युजन के भन्छ सरले जुन वाटर हाइड्रो पावरसँग रिलेटेड, तर आजको टपिक चाहिँ अलिक पोस्ट कोभिड भएको म अलि पोस्ट कोभिडसँग रिलेटेड के आउँछ होला भनेर कुरिरहेको थिएँ सर. त्यही भएर म त्यसलाई नि रिलेट गरेर सरसँग पोस्ट कोभिड पछि जस्तो अब सरले क्लाइमेट चेन्जको इक्जाम्पल दिनुभएको छ. यो त प्री कोभिड अहिलेको कोभिड एरा र पोस्ट कोभिडमा पनि यो चेन्ज यस्ता कुराहरू त भइरहेको हुन्छ. सरले त्यो प्रिन्सिपललाई लिएर यसरी यो अब रिसोर्सेसहरू ओभर एक्सप्लोइटेड भइरहेछ, जस्तै भ्याक्सिनकै कुरा भयो भने त्यो पनि एउटा ट्रेजेडी अफ कमन्स, कमन रिसोर्समा कति प्रब्लम आएको छ. सो यो रेगुलेसनहरूलाई मेन्टेन गर्नुको लागि सर के एक्जाम्पल्स फ्रम योर साइड सर? थ्याङ्क यू सर.
हस्, तीनवटा हामीले प्रश्न अथवा ओपिनियनहरू पायौँ डाक्टर हिरा श्रेष्ठ, सनिस महर्जन र डाक्टर अञ्जना शाक्यबाट. दीपक सर, ओभर टु यु.
ओके, थ्याङ्क यू. म तिनवटा सिक्वेन्सियली जान्छु. हिरा सरको चाहिँ नि अब my argument is yeah, politicians are a big part of our problem, but they are not just the only problem. Okay, there's a very strong what we call iron triangle between the, let's say, the politician, the bureaucrat, and the businessman to take us along the path that we are in. It's an iron triangle, and there's a need to have change in all that. The distorted dharma triangle I showed you is where the problem is. Okay, now restoring that dharma means, yes, getting better politicians is one thing required, but the point is we also need to get more more honest businessmen and more honest bureaucrats along the way. That's there. Now, how do we do that? It's not easy. I'll give you an example. And I think this is where the education sector, and this is why I'm so happy you guys have started this program. It's a small step. It's not going to solve all the problems in the country, but it's a good start. Why? Because I'll give you an example. Just before COVID, we're doing some research on water and water-induced disaster. And we were in a village up in the mountain on the Mahabharat, and what the village Vada chief, the ward chief, the Vada Adhyaksha, was a very dynamic guy. He was helping us. He was very into development and all that. But I was absolutely shocked when I realized that his election manifesto that got him elected, said that he would assure that there would be a road within 3 minutes of every house. Think of it, a road within 3 minutes of every house. I live in smack in the middle of Patandoka, okay, on the 4th floor. I cannot get to the road in 3 minutes. It takes me 5 minutes to go down at least, okay. I'm right in the Patango Chowk, okay, in front of Patan High School. Okay? Now, imagine in the hills of Nepal to have, within 3 minutes a road. I shudder to think, but then it was so popular that he got elected. Okay. Now, why I'm raising this example is we have a long way to go to re-educate, okay, the entire population. You guys have a small task of re-educating graduate students only, but then there's a long way. Now, this brings me to that question that actually Anjana asked, I'll come to that later, of these clumsy solutions and uncomfortable knowledge. But let me get to Sanish. FDI, yeah, I mean, there are examples of FDI, foreign direct investment. My problem with FDI is a couple of things, I should tell you frankly. First of all, I'm more worried about DI, Nepali direct investment. Right now, Nepali good investors are not able to invest in Nepal. There is capital flight going on, okay? Now, if Nepalis are not able to invest, why the hell would a foreigner invest in Nepal? First question. Okay. So my argument, and this was said by P.P. Adhikari, who was one of the founding directors of small hydro in NEA long ago. There was a talk at Godavari Alumni Association, and this is 1990s, and he said something that stuck to my mind even now. What he said, and there was the first time after democracy, multi-party restoration, so there was a lot of talk of, privatization, foreign direct investment. Now, he had been helping building the small hydro after he retired with private sector also. Okay, what he said was the difference between foreign investment and local investment or national investment is only in the number of zeros. If a Nepali can invest 1 crore, a foreigner might invest 50 crores, okay? But the security that a Nepali investor looks for is 1 crore, security and return on capital and so on and so forth, is exactly what the foreign one also looks for. Now, if the Nepali does not feel secure in his investment, how the hell is a foreigner going to feel secure? Okay, that's the first thing. Second answer, my problem with foreign direct investment is, let us not forget, it is about profit. And development is not just about profit, because as I highlighted, there are 4 types of goods, 3 that matter. Private goods, which private sector does for profit. There is public goods, which government has to manage as a public good for the good of all. Okay, and then there's common pool good, which mostly civic movements, the Guthis, etc., manage for posterity, which cannot be managed by the market at all. The market, if it got a chance, would convert, I don't know, Nyatapola into a coffee shop. Okay, is that what we want? Is that development? Okay, so the argument I'm making with that diagram, and I'll come to Anjana Sakya's thing, is that we need all those 3. We need private investments, whether foreign or national. We need a decent government, and we need voluntary movements that take care of the public values and needs that do not come within the profit realm. Okay. Preservation of our culture, education of children, and so on and so forth, okay, or even education of adults, okay. Now, what Anjana said is that the clumsy solutions, it comes from a mantra of cultural theory, development mantra of cultural theory. It's called wicked problems, uncomfortable knowledge, clumsy solutions. What it means is problems of development, problems of climate change, problems of water and energy, these are wicked problems. Wicked problems are problems that cannot be solved by textbook methods. They are such problems that the different social solidarities I showed you, market, state, civic movements, cannot even agree on the definition of the problem. Each one has his own definition of what the problem is, wildly differing. If the problem definition differs, their solution is going to differ even more, obviously, okay? So the solution to wicked problems is uncomfortable knowledge, first of all. Knowledge that one or the other has filtered out, okay? And then that knowledge, by bringing these different knowledges, contradictory knowledges to the same table, hearing about them, giving them a voice, and responding to them, allows for what we call the development of clumsy solutions. We have been too often taught in universities in engineering to go for neat solution, neatly optimized solution. Neatly optimized solutions in the age of climate change, in the age of uncertainty that we are entering, are highly rigid and will collapse. Melamchi was a neat solution, you see. Okay. Look what happened with the uncertainty now we have. Okay. Whereas development of tankers, development of bottled water, development of recycling, you know, all these kind of things, these are clumsy solutions, many 10% solutions. So what we are now seeing is that post-COVID, COVID is, you know, disaster though it may be, is also an opportunity, a forensic moment to get things right. Because this is the only time people are listening, you know. Once a disaster goes, 2015, after the earthquake, we had an opportunity. Now, who remembers 2015? Nobody remembers that. And we lost the opportunity to change the way we do business, okay? So the disaster is an opportunity, but here it is more important for civic voices, primarily, followed by market players, to come about and say, here is a better, equitable, civic, more efficient market ways of doing business, okay? And if that can be brought forth and the governments convince the politicians, as Hiraji said, convinced a new generation of politicians, by the way, the old ones I have given up completely on, okay?
Yeah,
Then maybe we'll go somewhere.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak sir. Now we have second round of opinion, or second round of talk, second round of questions from the floor. Let it be the final round also, because we are running out of time. It's already 5:36, and we want to complete it by 5:45. So in the second round of this question, I have Dr. Shailesh Ranjitkar firstly, and then I have Ms. Sandhya Dhital, and then Mr. Yashaswi Dungel. Let's begin from Dr. Shailesh Ranjitkar. Shaileshji, and also we have Bijaya's sister. Let her be the final one. Well, Aditi ji also is there. Shailesh, Dr. Shailesh, he is our faculty member. You can unmute now, no problem. I think he's having some problem in unmuting. So while waiting for Shailesh, I invite me. Oh, sorry, I was muted. So in the second round of the talk, second round of the question, let me invite three personalities, starting from Dr. Shailesh Ranjitkar, and then Ms. Sandhya Dhital and Yashaswi Dungel. Well, also I have seen Bijaya's sister raising her hand. So Shailesh, you cannot unmute. Nirajan.
I can now, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Dinesh sir. And thank you, Deepak sir. Thank you very much.
Let the question be very precise, okay? Because you already have written here. We save.
So my question is like, I'm a crop modeler. I do a lot of crop modeling, and water is one of a very critical factor. So you have shown such a huge uncertainty in the water modeling, water availability modeling, I should say. So in that case, most of model that I develop regarding this crop suitability based on the water availability will be kind of failure. So in that case, how would you suggest how we can cope with such uncertainty problem with the this water modeling stuff? Because it is, after all, it is only data we have kind of like available for developing a crop model for agriculture development and planning. Thank you, sir. Deepak sir?
The next I see from Sandhya ji, but unfortunately her audio is not working, so I read for her. She has written, Deepak sir, in your opinion, means Deepak sir's opinion, is a socially cohesive society likely to benefit more, Deepak sir? And in terms of sustainability, at least from technological advancements, I got that impression from your example you have given. Please clarify. And then I have Yashaswi. Yashaswi, could you unmute yourself?
Yes, sir, I can.
Please, Yashaswi.
Thank you, Puju. So thank you, Deepak sir. You have clarified my question in the comment section, in the chat section. Well, I am working at an NGO myself, and it's a research NGO. So we mostly work in the policy implication side. So do you think like I'll read out the question again, that this is the high time, we bring the traditional system like Guti that you mentioned earlier and try to completely remove the concept of NGOs and INGOs, because like so far NGOs and INGOs have contributed to a certain level for the country's development. So is completely removing them a solution as of now, or we perhaps wait for a few years until Nepal graduate to a developing country and then think about, removing them and through either diplomatically or by using the hard power, as I mentioned in the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Yashaswi. And Deepak sir, just a moment. I have two more hands raised here, which I should not ignore. The next is from Ms. Aditi Singh. She is an undergraduate student, and we must encourage her. Aditi, could you unmute yourself, or I should read for you?
Sure, no problem.
Please, Aditi, please. Yes, okay. Very loudly.
Thank you. So it was a great session. First of all, I really enjoyed it and definitely got to learn a lot of things, and definitely made me rethink as well as a Briton. As Sir told us about how inland water transportation is definitely something which we could utilize properly, but like what are the prospects in Nepal with our water resources and our water bodies? How can we actually develop inland water transportation, Sir? I would really like to know that.
Thank you, Aditi, for your very precise question. And then finally, we have Bijaya's sister. Bijaya's sister, you can unmute now. So let it be the final question to Deepak sir, and then Deepak sir will respond before we conclude it. Thank you, Bijaya madam.
Deepak sir, Bhuju sir, मलाई त यो अब म हेल्थ ब्याकग्राउन्ड को नर्स परेँ, मलाई त यो एकदम नलेजेबल भयो, अनि दीपक सरले भने जस्तै कन्फ्युजन पनि भयो। बुझ्नलाई त अब अलिकति माथि-माथिको कुरा त मैले बुझेँ, जस्तो वाटरको बारेमा, फुडको बारेमा इत्यादि कुराहरू त मैले अलिअलि त बुझेँ, अरु डेप्थमा त बुझिनँ। तर मलाई प्रश्न चाहिँ के गर्न मन लाग्यो भने दीपक सरले यति राम्रा कुराहरू ल्याउँदै पनि गभर्नमेन्टले यसलाई चाहिँ इम्प्लिमेन्ट गर्न नसकेकोमा पनि मलाई कता खेद लाग्यो। एउटा कुरा, अर्को कुरा चाहिँ जुन दीपक सरले भन्नुभयो कि यो जुन आउँछ एड हाम्रो कसरी कति मात्रामा अथवा कति पर्सेन्टेज हाम्रो रियल पपुलेसनलाई जान्छ र कति पर्सेन्ट चाहिँ अब एड ल्याउने ग्रुपले नै त्यसलाई लिन्छन् भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ म विभिन्न ओहदामा काम गर्दाखेरि, मन्त्रालयमा सचिव भएर काम गर्दा, तालिम केन्द्रमा निर्देशक भएर काम गर्दा यो मैले पनि आफूमा आफै प्रश्न गरेर आफूले आफैलाई नै सान्त्वना दिने विषय भयो थियो। मैले पनि काम गर्थेँ यी एडहरुमा, तर खर्च देखेर मैले क्वेरी हुन्थ्यो मनमा सर, तर सान्त्वना आफैले दिन्थ्यो किनभने कर्मचारी भइयो, धेरै कुरा गर्नु भएन। अब एड आएकोलाई हामीले प्रयोग गर्यौं भनेर हाम्रो वार्षिक रिपोर्टमा उसमा मन्थली रिपोर्टमा हामीले प्रस्तुत गर्नु पर्थ्यो। त्यसकारणले दीपक सरको धेरै नलेजेबल कुराहरू मैले सिक्न पाएँ, सुन्न पाएँ मैले, किनभने भुजु सरलाई मैले जहिले पनि यिनी यस्तो मिटिङहरुमा मलाई बोलाउनु भनेर रिक्वेस्ट गरेछु अनि उहाँले सधैँ बोलाउनुहुन्छ। म रिटायर भएर घरमा बसेको हुँ, तर मलाई अहिले दीपक सरको कुराहरू सुनेर यस्तो विज्ञ मानिस हामीसँग हुँदै पनि देशले उहाँले अहिले भन्नुभएका कतिपय कुराहरू हामीले प्रयोग गर्न सकिने कुराहरू गरेको छैन भन्ने एउटा भयो। अर्को मलाई यो कोभिडको बारेमा जुन हाम्रो पोस्ट को लागि हाम्रो जुन भ्याक्सिनेसन चाहिँ दुरुपयोग भन्ने कुरा छ, यसलाई पनि गभर्नमेन्टले सुनेको नसुने गरेको हुन्छ र गभर्नमेन्टले इभन पोस्ट कोभिडले कति मान्छेहरू नेपालमा थलिएका छन् भन्ने कुराको पनि शब्द पनि बोलेको छैन। तिनी मान्छेहरूलाई पनि हामीले मिडियाबाट केही न केही बोल्नु पर्ने हो कि, किनभने विभिन्न ठाउँको हामीले रिपोर्ट हेर्दाखेरि पोस्ट कोभिडबाट आत्तिएका मान्छेहरू धेरै छन्, जीवनै कस्तो भएको छ उनीहरूको भन्ने हामीले यसो पढेका हुन्छौँ। यी इत्यादि कुराहरू मैले कन्फ्युजन मात्रै बोले, क्वेशन त मेरो केही पनि होइन होला, मेरो कन्फ्युजन मात्र हो। दीपक सरलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद, भुजु सरलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Vijay
Okay.
sister. Finally,
Okay.
Deepak sir, over to you to respond.
Thank you.
All
They're
those
great
very
questions.
interesting
Each one of
answers.
them is a subject matter for a separate lecture. Each one of these questions are very quickly. Our Shailesh ji I'm having a big fight. I'm here, Michael Thompson, myself, YASAMA, International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. Our arcade debate your modeling modelings are great. Modelings help tame the mind, so to speak, logically. The model बनाउनु र मोडलमा वर्क गर्नु भनेको यो चाहिँ logical sequence मा यस्तो probability हुन्छ यस्तो हुन्छ. They are great stuff. Okay. यहाँ प्रब्लम केमा आउँदो रहेछ दुई तीनवटा भन्देखि चाहिँ नि त्यो मोडलको इनपुटमा especially countries like नेपालमा हैन how reliable are those numbers के हैन अब the numbers we use त्यसमा पनि complex modeling मा if it is only one sector भन्नु अहिले electricity को मात्रै मैले बसेर modeling गरे भने I may come with fairly interesting reliable answers. But if I have to do a modeling of something that has to take health into account, transport into account, changing climate into account, political uncertainty into account, the models, especially mathematical modeling, there's a big problem. So what we are arguing is that modeling should not be about neat solutions and geared towards kind of perfect knowledge and perfect control. Okay? There must be an acceptance of the uncertainties that go in the model and the uncertainties that say that the result of the model is uncertain within this very wide range. Right? Models make interesting exercise. Right? But a complicated model mathematical modeling that even modelers have a hard time understanding it. Right? A policy maker tesma base bhayera policy banauda what happens is most policy makers feel very uncomfortable because they are also dealing with uncertainties. Politicians, politics is about uncertainty anyway. So I think the real answer to this question is, can we simplify models? Number one, can we make models such that they handle uncertainties, that they are not about total full 100% control and optimized 100%, but more clumsy, and open to, different evolutionary pathways. Right? I think, we come somewhere. Otherwise, there'll be an exercise of modelers, by modelers, for modelers, and nobody else, So that's, I think, my first concern. Okay? Sandhya cohesive society. Now, one of the problem with the market is that market is a very disruptive force. Socially, it's a very, very disruptive force. The example I give is an average Nepali village boy, is a, let's say, 18 years ago, he's a member of a village. He's a citizen there. You see, what he is he's there. He's part of that overall citizens group. He's got culture. He's got relatives. He's got, annual ceremonies that he's part of and all that. So besides his income, he's part of many other things. What the market has now done is they have taken that citizen of a village Nepal, like a tree, cut down all the branches, lopped off all the bark, everything, and made lumber saleable in the market, in the Gulf, where he has no social protection, okay? Where he is completely cut off from family and all social sort of contact, and he's useful only for the 10 or 15 hour whatever a day that he works with his hands. That's the only value he has, and he earns some money which he sends to his family. So you have degraded a citizen into a laborer, and that social transition is so phenomenal. In Nepal, we have not even begun to study the impact. There was one recent very small study which shows that Nepal's population is going to be dramatically declining in the years ahead. Why? Because a girl that would normally be married in village in 16 years, I think legally you are allowed, I believe, at 16 or whatever is the age. Now, because the boys are all out, doing jobs, she cannot get married and gets married at 20 or 21. The fecundity rate goes down dramatically, And I'm sure Vijayji can answer this much better, that, if they start getting babies from the age of 17 and getting babies from the age of 21, there's a huge difference. After you go past 25, 30 or something, the chance of you getting pregnant gets lower and lower. Okay? So the population decline naturally happens. This is just one impact we're talking about. There are many such impacts that are happening, that we are losing the social cohesivity in Nepal with this remittance economy, And the social consequence of that leads to a kind of fatalism, a kind of nihilism, which will express itself in our social life in dangerous ways. Growth in criminal activity is only one aspect of it, okay? So I think we have a very strong worry about what kind of development we want. Is it a development where they send remittances and the whole country relies on remittance to keep buying luxury products and consumable items? Or is it a country where we want citizens to lead wholesome life as citizens, okay? So this is the answer. So I think we are really losing that, okay? Even iPhones and mobile phones are not helping because it is isolating people even more, and the false information that people get carried on is, it's pretty frightening where we will end up. Now, Yashasvi's question I partly answered. I myself am part of, work with NGOs, and I'm a board member in several of these international NGOs, not in Nepal, but outside. My argument is this phenomenon is also a new phenomenon, like foreign aid. Let's not forget, this phenomenon didn't exist. There were only churches coming to give aid. My school, St. James Godavari School, was run by, Catholic Jesuit missionaries, okay? We Nepalis all want to get American DVD and visa and go to America. Here are Americans who came and spent a lifetime in Nepal, educating, Singhanes like me, to speak good English. Okay. Now, just think behind that, what was there behind it, we respect our teachers, Father Wharton, Father Moran, Father, Stiller, Father Locke, all these guys who spend a lifetime educating jokers like me. Okay. Now, that was there in our society also. And that is not there in INGO, by the way. The Jesuit Society of Nepal is not an INGO. It's something else. It's a voluntary kind of organization that has to function within rules and all. My problem with INGOs is it's a rather recent phenomenon. It's also a phenomenon that came or got a big boost with the Washington Consensus post-collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1990s, where the Western countries decided that there is no point giving aid to governments of corrupt third world governments. We'd rather give it through these INGOs whom we can control. Okay. So the question now is, I'm against banning INGOs and things like that. Forget it. I think that banning anything is going to be bad. My point is, what is the value systems that they are bringing in? Is it a development value system they are bringing in, or is it political value systems that they are here to bring about? Okay, and that's a big question, and that fight is there. You see more blatant in India, Russia, and China because they are big countries. We are too small a country to do that, but this is this thing. The other problem with INGOs in Nepal, especially, is it's a one-way street. It's not a collaboration between civic bodies of Nepal and, let's say, America or Britain or Europe. Okay? They are the donors. Ours are recipients. Okay, so it's a Malik and Raiti kind of a relation here, which is not a healthy relation. I would rather that Nepali NGOs were collaborating with international NGOs jointly, and that there was a more equal relationship. Yeah, we may not have the money, but we bring in kind many other things that they cannot bring in. Okay, so there has to be a total reassessment of this partnership, I think, and we need that partnership, by the way. I'm against isolating ourselves and banning this, because a lot of good things or good ideas can come from international partnerships. Aditi's question on inland transport, there's a huge prospect of that even within Nepal. Let me give you one example. Many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, okay, I was in Dolal Ghat, and what was interesting was that in Dolal Ghat, with the rafting industry, these rafts had come about. Some bright entrepreneurs in Dolal Ghat suddenly bought these rafts, which was in rafting companies, for tourists, And what they did is in Dolal Ghat, which was a road point, they used the raft to load it with rice and kerosene and other things needed in villages. And now there are roads available, but there were no roads then from Dolal Ghat all the way to Ramechhap along the Sunkosi, transporting these goods, rice. If a porter carried all that rice, the rice would be too expensive. If a porter carried all the kerosene, it would be very expensive. But here they were using rafts, some sharp businessmen, transporting all that goods right down to very remote villages along the Sunkosi River. And then they would carry that raft back, taking 3 days or 4 days to come back to Dolal Ghat and then doing the transport again. Okay. Now, this is just one local example, but I would argue that if there are students who are interested, they should study, for example, the Budi Gandaki. The Budi Gandaki, which is a mess right now, they've Gizal Ramro project, like that's a different story. But in Budi Gandaki, there is a reservoir of 40-kilometer length from Malaiko or wherever that it starts, that dam, all the way North Nepal, right, very close to the Chinese border, is 40 kilometers. Okay. Now, transporting heavy goods, rice, kerosene, LPG, gas, I don't care what, it's much cheaper on that reservoir. If you develop Burigandaki reservoir as a transport mechanism to reach those remote villages 40 kilometers deep into the mountain, then if you had to build an equivalent highway, the equivalent highway would be 250 kilometers. Now, think of the difference that makes, okay? So Burigandaki and our Nepali hydropower, what I'm arguing is, should be developed more with this multi-purpose uses in mind than just electricity. Because otherwise electricity becomes too expensive, and nobody can use it. Whereas if you develop it also for irrigation, 1 lakh hectare can be irrigated in the Nawalparashi and Chiton from the water stored in Burigandaki. So if you develop it as flood control, irrigation, navigation, fisheries, tourism development along the reservoir, resort development and all, the cost assigned to electricity will be so low that electricity will be very cheap. Okay, because the irrigation has to take part of the cost of the development. For navigation will have to take some cost of it, flood control and so on. So what the challenge before water development in Nepal is now to go multi-purpose, and develop water projects as multi-purpose projects rather than single projects for electricity and exporting electricity to Bangladesh. That's nonsense. Okay, and finally, I think Vijayaji, I think what is really interesting is that when we brought out this book Ropeways in Nepal, we did something very interesting. We did not do a Lokarpan. This is 2004. We did what is called Sarkarpan. We called Shankar Sharma, who was the vice chairman of the planning commission at that time, and Raghuji Pant, who was the transport minister. We brought them, put them on the stage, and we said, here is the book we have just brought out. It's about ropeways in Nepal. It's cheaper than roads. It's cheaper. It uses Nepali hydropower instead of imported fossil fuel, and half of the energy used to transport cement and so on. So here we do Sarkarpan. We are giving to the government to consider this as your policy. Okay, that was 2004. Today is 2021 and nothing has moved. Okay, which means that I would blame myself and people like me in the civic movements to say that we have not put enough pressure as civic movements that we should have, as journalists, as media people, that we should have put more pressure on governments, because governments do not change that easily. They are locked in technologically to diesel trucks, and those are roads and so on. So to change that, what really we need is more activism in the civic movement, aligned with good science, and good scientific research. Okay? So if environmentalists and social activists can do good scientific research along the way like this, and then put pressure on government mechanisms, and it's better to put pressure on the local government, which is more effective pressure than national government. National government is too big. Okay, then I think we will achieve some results. And the same applies with COVID. And I'll close by saying this, that my problem with this COVID thing is, the more I begin to understand this, more I look at it, the more I get scared about the amount of uncertainty. Now we have these figures, what is it, 12,000 a day or whatever there, but that's only people who are tested. What about the ones who are not tested? It's huge. I myself, I think I got this COVID this time because I had this runny nose, viral diarrhea, everything. My mother got it and my wife got it. But because there was no fever, because there was no chest congestion requiring ventilators or whatever this nonsense, we didn't even bother to test. Now, why didn't I bother to test? Simply, one test, 2,000 rupees. I have to test 5 people in the family. One is not enough. Now that's 10,000 bucks. Why would I waste 10,000 bucks, on testing for something that I know probably was COVID, but, as long as I don't have to go to a hospital, which I had to do the first time with Delta, I stayed 7 days in the hospital. Why would I bother? Okay. So I think there's so much uncertainty on the data that I do not rely on official data at this point. I'm more interested in the uncertainty in official data. And that's where science should come in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Deepak sir. जति सुने पनि सुनाउ लाग्ने तपाईको आर्गुमेन्टेसनहरु र एउटा कुराले चाहिँ गजब अहिले फेरि अन्तमा मैले यो सम अप गर्दिन भन्दा पनि मलाई बाध्य भएर मलाई किन हुटुटी लाग्यो के मनमा. Number one is I was just wondering why the INGOs were प्रोलिफेरेटिङ होइन त किन बढिरहेछ भन्ने लागिरहेको थियो मलाई एउटा आर्गुमेन्टेसन तपाईको गजब लाग्यो मलाई because the governments are corrupted. Why should they, give money to the corrupted government? यो नेपालको मात्र कुरा गरे होइन है होलको होइन सरले होल and I almost had forgotten कि त्यो Ropeways in Nepal 2004 मा रहेछ है and Deepak sir, I still remember you had encouraged me to make the book review on that occasion.
Yeah.
So भनेपछि we have grown older, eh? 2004 ma रहेछ. Anyway, with this, I would like to invite Prem Ranaji. He's a senior faculty from Thames International College. र vote of thanks propose गर्नको लागि म उहाँलाई निम्तो गर्दैछु. I'm inviting him. Prem sir.
Thank you, Dinesh sir. So should I start?
Sir, video खोल्न मिल्छ होला?
I have this issue with this camera at the moment.
All right, okay, no problem, sir.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, is that clear enough? Yeah. Okay. First of all, Honorable Chief Guest Dr. Nanda Badr Singh, guest speaker Deepak Gawali sir, Dr. Dinesh Bhuju and MICD team, Nepal Research and Education Network, and REN. National College invited academicians, faculty members, students, and potential students. Well, a namaste and a warm good evening to all of you. On behalf of Thames International College, I believe it is a great honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. Before I begin, I extend my sincere apologies as Surendra Malla, our Associate Director of Social Science, School of Social Science at Thames International College, is unable to grace this event due to his family commitment. Henceforth, I have been requested to convey this vote of thanks. Well, for everyone's knowledge, Thames International College under School of Social Science runs 5 undergraduate programs in social work, rural development, psychology, journalism and mass communication, and sociology, apart from its program in information management and BBA. On a personal note, I find all this whole event, me being invited in the last minute as a replacement, so interesting and yet so surprising at the same time. To be honest, I seem to be the common connection in this event, and I share with you all why. Well, for everyone's knowledge, I am an alumni of National College, having completed Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies back in 2007. I was associated with the college as a faculty member teaching governance and development course from 2014 to 2016. Maybe Bhuji sir might have a remote memory. I'm also a former faculty member of MSCD, where I taught 20 hours under development theory under course Development Theories, Evolution and Interpretation back in January 2014. So it's good to see and meet virtually Bhuji sir and Ujjwal sir after so long. Without further ado, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Honorable Chief Guest Dr. Nanda Badr Singh for gracing this event, despite your illness and busy schedule. This collaborative program would not be completed without having your presence and inspiring word. I hope and pray you recover soon. And on behalf of the entire organizing team, I thank you, sir, from the bottom of my heart. Likewise, here I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Deepak Gawali for your profound and insightful analysis. I think I just got a message. Is that okay? No. To Deepak Gawali for your profound and insightful analysis on post-pandemic priorities in development and international cooperation. I believe you have given us a 360-degree analysis and perspective on prospect challenges on post-pandemic priority. If I may say so with due respect, I believe that you have confused us just not to be confused. So your eminent presence has indeed made this event a memorable one. And once again, thank you. I'm also thankful to the entire team of NREN, MICD National College, and all faculty members, students, and potential students for their presence. I'm hopeful and do believe that this collaboration will be continued in coming days. Once again, thank you all for your time, patience, and considerations. And please do stay safe. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. With this vote of thanks note, we conclude our program today. And once again, we wish early recovery of Professor Nanda Singh and other family members of our faculty members and our students. Thank you so much once again. Thank you. Deepak sir, namaste.
Thank you,
Deepak sir
everyone.
को भाषामा जय होस्।